This program is made up of a series of chapters, the largest of which will take us up to the first half of the semester. It will be the source of the greater extent of vocabulary related to line. Each chapter is based on a proposition about form, and this first proposition is that form is based in geometry. That geometric base is partly expressed in comparative analysis using what we will refer to as angle tool and grid tool. When you see me use the pink stick of insulation held up to the direction of observed angles here so I can determine their particular position in the drawing, that is angle tool. When I hold up horizontals and verticals to plot common points along those pathways, that is grid tool. You'll see the same comparative gestures made by holding out a pencil for comparison at other times here. The vertical lines drawn on the page to line up the observed landmarks are known as plumb line, and the horizontal lines drawn for comparison are called levels. These lines may also be line extensions, which is the term for extending a line beyond the boundary of the object or path that it relates to. The plumb and level lines may not be line extensions, and instead are lines that pass through or connect visual landmarks they share no descriptive lines with. And similarly, the lines drawn in relation to angle tool observations can be a line extension of some descriptive element, or it may locate an important visual pathway between or among various visual elements. So these various lines in response to relationships discovered using the angle and grid tools are the primary organizing lines being introduced in this drawing. You'll see that, again, I address the whole page, the full composition from the beginning, and establish lines that hold the page within a few minutes. But I also don't over-describe the objects. One effective way of seeing that unnameable unique form, the form that precedes description, especially if you find yourself trailing away from what you see or reinterpreting things as pictograms, is to look in terms of positive and negative shape. If you see in shape, positive shapes are the stuff. Those are the things that you see. And negative shapes are the shapes of spaces between things. So seeing in shape, there are also the shapes of groups of things. And so if you can think in terms of seeing the not just the shapes of things, but the shapes of spaces and the shapes of elements that you actually perceive as a group of elements, then that will take you away from that more object-based, more naming approach, and toward this way of seeing that we're after. So you'll see this video will lapse back and forth between sped up sections and sections that are at normal speed. When you want to get an overall idea of what we're seeing here, I think that many of these early videos, like what you do in class, are overall between a half hour and 45 or 50 minutes. Maybe they're an hour long if you include the breaks. So that gives you some sense of the pace of development of these things and the way that they are, again, held open at some length, but also that the page is being covered in waves. So the searching line method we've established still applies here. With some angles are stretched beyond the boundary of what they represent, while other edges or contours are left open or broken, and the organizing lines are treated like the other line work, with a full range of variation or difference, and as part of the constructive history or skeleton of the drawing, a record of unique active looking. The human eye is always making connections, looking for patterns and relationships. The organizing lines and the broader premise of form based out of geometry are tied to that pattern recognition, that form preceding description, form that precedes language. In some sense, this is a most basic tool, the straight line that is the shortest distance between 2 points, that is your point of reference here. So to emphasize these points, or put it another way, this is a way of making a network of comparisons so that relationships and proportions can be understood. Seeing this way of seeing form really has to do with the idea of very comparative looking. These lines, these organizing lines, are not an addition to the drawing. They are the drawing. The organizing lines are as real as the most explicit contours. So these new lines also are always moving and changing, varying in intensity, speed, direction, grouping, and changing from one to another and changing along the course of a line. To learn this process, you have to realize that it's not just an intellectual proposition. At least, it's not mainly that. I think in some sense, to move toward form that is based out of geometry, that arises from geometry, that returns to geometry. You have to embody the new tools. You'll notice that my drawing method remains primarily fast. Not only when the video is sped up, but in general, even when I pause or slow down my movement around the page, I make lines with quick strokes. And that's because my hand and eye can make a lot of visual responsive decisions based around these terms of engagement we're setting up. That pre-verbal response to form. So I can make 10 light lines and pick out and emphasize the 2 or 3 I see fit in an instant. Also, it's easier to draw a straight line with a rapid move, to drop the plumb line from the shoulder, or you drop that plumb line like a butcher, or you pitch the short angle like you're skipping a rock. You bat at that long angle line like you're hammering a nail. This way of seeing movements of line and dropping them in, again, is a way of not slowing down so much that you lose the thread in some sense. Don't worry if you feel more off target than on at the start. In some sense, you're learning to dance, and we all start from different points on the scale. And like dancing, it's going to keep looking better the less you slow down to count. Let's just look.